All right, I'm doing a quick microphone check. It looks like my microphone is sending a signal to the streaming software, and it looks like I'm live. Okay, everybody, welcome to the Jelly Roll Club. If you are new to this channel, you need to subscribe in order to be able to participate in the chat. That keeps all the weird spammers out of our chat. So if you haven't done so, go ahead and subscribe. It gives you access to all of the notifications that I send, and that way you never miss a video or any of the series that we are doing. And remember, this channel is free. You don't have to subscribe. You don't have to pay for a pattern. You just log on to the live streams, follow along, print the handouts, or actually download the handouts to your computer. You don't even have to print them, and you can just look at what we're doing. All right, so as promised, I told some people that I would give them a starry preview. So I will give you a preview of the project that we've been working on, the mystery stars. So far we have worked on 2 stars, and I'm going to show you as I've been placing my stars into the template so you can see. So welcome everybody, tell everybody where you're from, and I'm going to share my desktop so you guys can see. All right, so here is a preview of the starry quilt that we've been working on. As you can see, we're going to be placing those stars in an irregular handout. So for those of you who are working on mystery stars, this is your sneak peek, okay? I'm going to take that off of there. Okay, so tonight we are going to work on the second easiest scrap quilt ever. The first one is the Duckworth. So if you logged on at the beginning of the year, I did the easiest quilt ever, and it really is because there's no measuring and there's no 1/4 inch seams to worry about. You just put your fabric down and you sew. This one is the second easiest scrap quilt ever, and I made a little handout for you guys because all you need is jelly roll strips that are cut 6.5 inches by 2.5 inches. And a jelly roll strip is literally just a strip of fabric that's 2.5 inches wide, and you're gonna be able to see that. If you ever lose the video, there's a little QR code on this handout where you can scan it and you can watch this live stream later. And so if you forget any parts that I'm going to show you tonight, you can go there. And so this quilt finishes 70 by 90, which is a fabulous couch quilt. You can make it a little bit longer. If you have tall people in your family, you might want to make it 96. So you can make it 70 by 96, but that'll fit a nice couch. And you need 105 jelly roll strips to make this project. Each brick, once we're done, you're going to see it, will measure 6.5 by 10.5. And then when we sew it into the quilt, it will measure 6 by 10. So whenever you have a pattern, pay attention to those unfinished and finished sizes because you don't want to trim your pieces incorrectly. And so this is what we're working on tonight. Super easy. I'm not going to get too fussy, but this is the handout. If you have it, it looks like this, the second easiest scrap quilt ever. All right, everybody, I see lots of friends have joined us. So we will go ahead and get started. And the first thing that I want to show you is something that's essential to this project. So I'm going to share the block so you can see what we're working towards. And so what we're going to work towards is making bricks. And you're going to hear me talk about bricks. So let me show you my camera. Let me see if I can get it nice and straight. Okay, so we're going to be making bricks. And these bricks are going to finish 10 by 6. But before you finish them, they're going to be 10.5 by 6.5. And so this is the unit that we're working on. It is literally the easiest scrap quilt ever. And if your seams are accurate, 1/4 inch, then they're all going to turn out the same size and you don't have to do any trimming. This is why I called it the second easiest quilt ever. And so this is the block that we're working on. But before we start this block, we're going to talk about color, because color is an essential element of this quilt. Okay, so I'm going to share something that's on my website. So if you've ever watched any of the videos, I have something called the Color Guide for Quilters. And so I'm going to share my desktop and I'm going to show you what it looks like. So it's the Amazing Color Guide, and it has a color wheel on there, and it talks about different color combinations. If you struggle with picking out quilt colors, this will really help you. So let's talk about that. In a color wheel, there are 12 colors. These are primary colors, secondary colors, and the colors in between, which are called tertiary. If you look on the opposite side of the color wheel, that is the color's complement. So for those of you who remember art class from a million years ago, the easiest way to make a quilt sparkle is to combine complements. And what I mean by that is to take colors that are opposite of the color wheel, like purple and gold, right? This purpley color, or purple and yellow, lime and fuchsia, orange and teal. Those are all colors that are going to make your quilt sparkle. And so if you look at that color guide, you're going to see. And so for example, this is a monochromatic quilt. Only uses blues in different tones, right? Light, medium, and dark. This color combination is called a complement. So like orange and aqua is a complement. And I love using complements because it really creates a quilt that is absolutely fabulous. And for those of you who don't know where this color guide is, I'm going to copy that and I'm going to drop it in the chat so that you can grab it later. So let me drop that link in the chat. And you're going to be able to view that or download it if you want to. But if you don't know where you can find it, just go to my website. And when you go to past projects and you click on the very last thing called resources, it's at the very bottom. It's called the Amazing Color Guide. You open it up and there it is. And all you have to do is either save it to your Google Drive and make a copy, print it, download it to your device. It's right there for you. And so this has all of the possible color combinations that you could think of. It has complements, it has tertiaries, it gives you examples of quilts that have certain color combinations, and it really just kind of helps you to pick out color. So if you're not good at that, this is the place to get started, and you're going to be like, yeah, this is great. I keep a color wheel in my sewing room at all times. It's super helpful. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and close all that up and we're going to go back to the project. Okay, so now that you have the handout and you know where to find all of the resources, let me show you what we've got. So I'm going to show you the block. Like I said, this is the basic brick that we're making, and you're going to need, your little handout tells you what you're going to need. You're going to need 105, which means you need 105 jelly roll strips to make this quilt. When you start, I want you to take all of your scrappy little strips and I want you to put them in 2 piles. You're going to take one pile, and I've already divided mine, and this is a pile of darks. So these are all my darks that I'm using for this quilt. So I have one pile. And then I have another pile that's a pile of lights, right? And so these have all been divided into lights and darks. And so I'm going to take 2 pieces and I'm going to put them together that are complements of one another. So for example, if I wanted to take this red, I would need to find a green to match it up with. So you're going to take 2 of any of your strips. So I'm going to match this red, and I could either do it with a dark green like this. If there's not enough contrast between those two, and I'm not liking that contrast because they're too much in the same range of value, then what I could do is I could go to my light pile and I could pick another green. It could be even a blue green or even a lime color. And I'm going to put it with that red, and that's going to create a little bit more contrast and more sparkle. And so I like how that looks together. I could even put this blue green with it and it would look okay. But I want to match all my stuff into pairs, right? This darker green, I'm probably going to match it, and I'm just going to put them together like this. If you notice that has a beautiful aqua, I'm probably going to match that green with a different color, maybe a pink, or I could even match it with an orangey color, maybe an orange. And I think that would look good together. And so what I'm doing is I'm creating a set of twins, right? So maybe this violet color right here could go with a cream, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to create contrast. And if you notice, this is like a geometric and this is a swirl. This is a geometric and this looks like a cheetah print. This is a floral and this is more of a solid, because I'm trying to give myself as much variety as possible. So that's the first thing that you've got to do. You've got to sort all of your scraps. Look at this nice purple color. And I'm going to put these together like this. I'm just going to stack them like this so that I know which ones go together. This kind of bluey purple would look great with a hot pink if I have one, or even a coral. So let's match it with this. And if you don't like how they look together, switch it out and find something else. This one looks better, I think. And so now that I have my stuff matched in pairs, I'm ready to start cutting. And the only tool that I need for this entire quilt is a 6.5-inch square to cut up all my pieces, and then like a 12-inch square to just make sure that they're all the same size. Okay, so your quilt is going to consist of rows made out of 7 bricks each. So you're just going to take and you're going to line these up. You can even put them one on top of the other. You don't even have to get fussy. And you're going to trim off the little end that is the selvage. You're going to see how quick and easy this goes. You can take all of the scraps that are in your scrap room, which I have hundreds of scraps that look like this, and you can just match them up. I cut everything in my sewing room into 2.5-inch strips, and if I have any 10-inch blocks left, I put them to the side, but these are all 2.5-inch strips. This block looks good in every color combination, any kind of print. If you have holiday prints, even things that have little pictures on them, that works the same too. All right, first step, you're just going to take and you're going to cut off the selvages because you don't want those, and you're going to see there's very little waste here. And then I'm just going to line up my ruler. I'm going to line it up in 2 directions across the bottom and across this way, and I'm going to cut this like this, and I'm getting 2 pieces of each. I'm going to cut it again. Just line it up if it gets kind of off kilter. Tease it with your fingers, and you're going to cut all the way down to the bottom. And then you're going to have a little nub that you're going to save. So you have a tiny little piece here, and I would save these little bricks. These little bricks are 4 inches by 2.5 inches. If you cut them down and make them 2 by 4, these make great potato chip blocks. And we're going to save those for what I call a bonus quilt that you can make out of this, a bonus baby quilt. So save those and get them out of your hair. All right. So now that you've cut 3 sets of 2, you're going to pick opposites. And this is enough for 2 blocks. So 2 jelly roll strips will make 2 blocks. I'm going to need 2 going horizontally and 2 going vertically of one color. And I'm going to pick one of these for the middle, just like this. And that makes 1 block, and then I'm going to make the opposite block out of this combination, and I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, just like this one. I'm going to have this across the bottom, and then I'm going to put this in the middle. Just like that, and that makes 2 complete blocks. Now these pieces here, you can save these for something else, or you can try to sew these together and use them for your little partial blocks, and you'll use less strips. But this is what I'm going to set aside because I can use those for another project. So there I have it. This is all I've got to do. So the first thing that I'm going to do now is I'm going to sew one of these strips 1/4 inch and try to make it as accurate as you can, and you'll have almost no trimming. So you're just going to line that up and line this up. And you'll see how quickly this comes together. All right, so always double check if you have commercial jelly roll strips. Double check that they're the correct size. Take them over to your machine and you're going to sew them. Super easy. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to line that up. I have a 1/4 inch foot on my machine, and I have my seam tape, as you can see right here, my seam tape that helps me to keep it straight as I sew. So just sew as straight as possible. All right. I'm going to sew the next one on there. Like I said, if you keep those straight and nice, even on the edges, it should be fine. I'm going to put a little friend in there. All right, so now that I have these two pieces, I'm going to take and snip this away. And I have this one here. I'm going to attach this, and I'm not going to press anything yet. I'm literally just going to attach that. I'm going to open this up, and then this one will go down. And so I will have opposites. And this is why I called this one Opposites Attract, because it's literally opposite colors, opposite sides. All right. If you want to pin this, you can, but it's really not necessary. I always pin if I'm trying to remember which side to sew on. And so my pins are literally just kind of reminders for what I'm going to do, especially if I have a bunch of them that I'm doing, and sewing assembly line is the fastest way to do it. And there we go. Let me head over to the machine, super fast. If you've never made a scrappy quilt, I encourage you to save all of your bits and pieces, because scrappy quilts really do sparkle. I have a little saying. I have a little sign that says scrappy is happy, because I love saving all of my little bits and making beautiful things out of them. That's probably one of the reasons why I started buying jelly rolls, is because in a traditional jelly roll, you get 40 pieces of fabric, and they're like all of the different pieces that go in a single fabric line. So if you buy the trademark name Jelly Roll from Moda, that is what you're getting. You're getting an entire collection of different colors and patterns, all from the same line. And so they coordinate nicely. But if you don't, you can still do the same thing, and you're just doing it with your scraps that you have at home. All right, so now that I have these two pieces together, I'm going to move the ends off to the side. And now I'm going to press these seams to the outside. Both of them are going to be done exactly the same way. And like I said, this is the second easiest scrap quilt ever, only because the easiest requires no 1/4 inch being accurate and no seams to match. This one has no matching seams, and the only thing you have to do is be accurate. Happy New Year, everybody. I hope you guys are staying warm and getting your quilt projects done. All right, I'm pressing this from the back. If you notice, I'm kind of teasing my seams out, and the reason I'm doing that is because I don't want any weird folds or puckers in the front. And I'm going to fold this like this with the outsides going out, and then I'm going, just gliding my iron along the entire length of that seam. That looks really flat, so I'm going to leave it alone. I don't see any weird puckers. My seams are nice and straight, and I'm going to do the same thing to my next piece. I just kind of tease my block like this with my fingers. I think that really helps to kind of lay your seam, and then I just take my fingers and just carefully kind of coax it in the direction that I want without stretching it. Just run your fingers and then take your iron and run it straight down along the same direction as the seam, and that'll prevent you from stretching this block. Because what you don't want is you don't want to push in this direction, because it will distort your rectangle and then it won't be a rectangle anymore. If I flip it over, look at how perfectly flat and straight that is. So now I have two, and I can finish the ends. And this makes a wonderful baby quilt. This makes a wonderful lap quilt. So look at that. Now I'm going to match those ends, and I'm going to go like this. And so now I'm going to sew this side down. I'm going to sew this side down. And I don't even have to stop, because one of the things that I like to do is literally just pin these in place, go to the machine, sew down both of these, come around the bottom, sew down this side, and then sew down the other side, and I will have my two blocks completed. If you want to make these as squares and not rectangles, then you can cut this 2.5 inches, 2.5 inches, 2.5 inches, and then this 6.5 inches if you wanted to make squares. So if you didn't want to make bricks, you could make this into squares and you would make another beautiful quilt as well. And so now this is going over to my machine, and I'm going to sew the same exact thing. And if you don't mess around and if you take your time, you end up with these things that are pretty accurate. That one has a tiny bit of trimming. See how close these are? Yep. This one has almost no trimming. This one has almost no trimming once I press that out. And so if you notice, these blocks end up being almost all the same size with very little fuss. And so this is one of the things I love about this quilt, is how easy it is. There's literally no thinking other than you need this ruler and a color wheel, and that's it. So I bring this over to the machine, and then I will check the chat for questions in just a second. All right. When you get to here and you're sewing a seam that's turned under, just check to make sure that it's staying the correct direction, because what you don't want is a twisted seam. I don't like my seams to get twisted. It makes them kind of lumpy later on. You sew this side. Yes, that is a great thing about batiks. If you use a batik, you don't have to worry about what side of the fabric you're sewing on. It doesn't matter. There is no right or wrong on a batik. They're printed the same on both sides. And so if you do it that way, then you're in business. Super easy. Then I'm going to bring that around to where I started. I don't know if you can see that. I don't even snip my thread, and I'm going to lay this one down. Doesn't matter which side, because it's a batik, unless I have a color preference. And then I'm going to lay that down and sew like this. All right, and so then once I get there, I can go ahead and snip that out of there. Snip that out of there. Be careful when you're snipping. Don't be snipping your stuff. Drop your blocks like I do, and then you have to bend over and grab one. But lay that on there. If you get to a point where you're laying this on there and you notice that maybe your strip right here is a tiny bit longer like mine, I'm going to tease it into place, and then I'm going to flip it with the longer side down. That just meant my seam was a little bit fatter than it needed to be. And then I'm going to sew with the slightly bigger piece downward. What that does is that as my feed dogs take in the fabric, it coaxes it into place, and it stretches it ever so slightly, so that now by the time I get to this end, Those pieces are even and I have to do no trimming. So if you ever find yourself in a situation where your quilt pieces are off by just a tiny bit, that's a little pro tip you can do. Just put the bigger piece on the bottom, touching the feed dogs, and you will end up with two pieces that are exactly the correct size. And that's because most sewing machines, because of the feed dogs, you get a little bit of slippage. And so if you want to avoid that, then all you've got to do is flip it with the bigger piece on the bottom. All right, so now that I have this, then one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to flip those seams to the outside. So I'm going to press and set those seams. Then I'm going to flip that out and press along that seam line. And I'm going to flip that out and press along that seam line. And the reason I do that is to reduce the distortion of this block. Because what you don't want is to distort your block and turn it into a curve or a bow. And so I want a perfect rectangle. And like I said, see this one that's off? That one just needs trimmed ever so slightly, and it should be fine. That means my seam was not 100% perfect, and no quilter really is. I mean, there's somebody out there who's perfect, but it's not me. All right. Welcome, Jane, to the Jelly Roll Club. I see there's some new people who just got here. All right. So now that I have these two pieces, now I'm ready. I'm going to lay them aside and I'm going to measure them. And I'm going to check to see what size they are. So I'm just going to take my handy dandy ruler, and these should measure 10 and a half, and I'm going to line up the little spikes with the 10 and a half, and that one is a little bit short. It's like, I don't know, that's the 1/4 inch mark. It's accurate. It's pretty accurate. The little teeth on that jelly roll strip are just outside the 1/4 inch mark. And I could always check it with a different ruler. So I like to lay my ruler, so it should be 10 and a half. And let's look at that. Line up the teeth to the teeth. That is pretty close. But as long as you're consistent, then all of your blocks will be the same. If that ever happens to you and you have a block that's not quite the size you thought it should be, mine is super close, one of the things you can do is you can spritz it with a tiny bit of water, and then you can just coax it into place. But that's not necessary. As long as all of my blocks are the same, then I'm going to be consistent. All right. So those are the full bricks that you need. Make that nice and flat. That will ensure my blocks are the same size. I'm going to check myself to see if they are. I lay them flat. And that shows me that my stitching is fairly consistent. And so now all I have to do is check those for the width, and they have to be 6.5 inches wide. And that looks pretty close. And then I'm going to check this one to see if it's 6.5 inches wide. And as long as all my blocks are the same, it doesn't matter if they're off just a smidge. All right, so now you're going to be laying these in your quilt. The first row of your quilt starts with full bricks. So you're going to lay 7 bricks across, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, across the top row. And so half of the rows, right, 8 of these rows will have 7 bricks across. And 7 rows will start with a partial brick that's made out of a small kind of half square. So if you wanted to, you could take some of these leftover bits and build the little partial square if you have enough. If you don't have enough, then it doesn't matter, because I've allocated enough jelly roll strips. I've counted these as holes so that if you wanted to, you could just slice some of these in half and then kind of cheat your row over just a hair so that you have absolutely no waste. But either way, the next row is going to start with a half of a block. And so you would start with that partial block that looks like this. And as long as you're close to this center line, then you're fine. And so you would start the next row with a partial block that looks like this. And then you would go just like that. And you would just start laying these bricks down like this. And like this. And you would have the next row looking like an entire row like this. And so you would just lay this one over. And then this row would have 7, starting with a whole brick. This row would have 6 holes and 2 halves, and so on and so forth. And this is why this quilt is called literally the second easiest quilt ever, because it has very little matching. You don't have to match any points. You just have to kind of estimate that this brick ends up kind of in the middle of this run, and that's all you've got to do. You sew 7 together for half of the rows, and you sew 6 of them together with 2 half blocks on the ends. And so you could cut some of these in half and just use them that way. You're going to end up with one row being a 1/4 inch shy if you do it that way. Just be aware that if you strictly just cut them in half, because this one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 seams in the 7 row. This one has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seams. So if you do it this way, you're going to end up a little bit short and you may have to trim, right? So if you want to just cut the blocks in half, you could do it that way. But just know that you're going to have to sliver trim the row with holes just a tiny bit on the end. And once you put your binding all the way around, you're not even going to notice. And that's why I said this is one of the easiest blocks ever. So that's all you got to do. Get all your little scraps out, make yourself a big stack of bricks, and then all you've got to do is sew them in rows and you're ready to go. All right, everybody, does anybody have any questions? This is super easy. Like I said, it doesn't take any time at all. All of your units are exactly the same. The instructions tell you how many bricks you need, how many half bricks you need, and then it shows you exactly how to lay it out. And so there's like a million blocks. This is probably my favorite ruler of all time. It's the 6.5 inch Creative Grids ruler. I don't get compensated for promoting this ruler, but it is my favorite ruler because if you work with jelly rolls, there's hundreds of blocks you could make with jelly roll strips and just this ruler. All right, everybody, I hope you guys are having a wonderful Sunday. We've got a few things coming up. Somebody said they wanted me to share some upcoming projects, and so let me just open my website so you guys can see what's coming up. Yes, I've been completing my UFOs. So for some of you guys who were wondering, right behind me is one of my UFOs. I finally got it completely quilted. I have everything ready. I even made the binding, so when I get off of here tonight, that's what I'm working on. I've been working on my Duckworth blocks. So for those of you who did the Easiest Scrap Quilt Ever, I've been working on a huge stack. I've almost got my Duckworth blocks ready to put together. And so you guys will get to see that next. But let me show you what's happening on the channel. So some people asked for a preview of what's coming up. So if you look on my website and you go under Quick and Easy Gifts, I'm going to be doing postcards that you can mail out. So that's coming soon. You're going to see the handout and other stuff coming up. So I'm going to be doing birthday postcards. And then the Superstar quilt is coming on February the 18th. So there's some color ideas there. And I'm going to be posting a handout in the next few days. There's the supply list for those of you who are making the gigantic Friendship Star quilt with us. And that is a big quilt that finishes almost 90 by 90. It's 82 by 82, but there's multiple sizes for that one. So if you're ready to finish the Superstar quilt, that's going to be on February the 18th. All right, friends, get busy working on those UFOs. I will see you guys next Sunday for the next installment of the Mystery Stars quilt. So I'm going to show you guys what that one is. We're going to be working on the Blazing Star, which is this star right here. And so when we get done with the Blazing Star, we're going to work on a little paper pieced star. And those are all skill builders. And so if you're following along and you saw what I had earlier, you notice that I had a, let me show you, a little sneak peek of where I'm going with the mystery stars. And so we're working on this second star, and that's going to be our project that's going to last all year long. So if you haven't started that one, just go ahead and jump in and go to the website, download the handouts, look at the videos, and you guys are going to love that quilt, I promise you. It's a skill builder, it's new quilter friendly, and you guys are going to have a great time with me. All right, friends, almost everything I make on this channel is Jelly Roll related, so if you haven't found any of the things, go to my website. There's a dozen projects you can download. It's literally pattern after pattern after pattern. Go on there, look at what's there. There's videos that go with everything. It's free, doesn't cost you any money, and I just want you to give this video a thumbs up. Share this channel with your friends if they haven't found us, and that's it. I appreciate you guys coming and stopping by. All right, everybody, you guys have a wonderful work week. I have to get back to work. No more goofing around for me. Quilting time is reserved for evenings now that I have to go back to work. All right, friends, have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your week, and I will see you guys next Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. All right, everybody, bye-bye.